She stopped texting like she used to. Her laughter changed, her energy shifted, and you felt it, that silent turning of the tide. You told yourself she lost interest, that maybe you weren't enough. But deep down, a quiet voice keeps asking, was that really rejection, or was it something else? You tried to forget it, tried to move on, but something about the way she paused, the way her distance felt measured, it stuck with you. What if her silence wasn't the end, but a mirror? What if every word she didn't say was carefully chosen, not to push you away, but to see if you would lose yourself without her? Because here's the truth most men never hear. She wasn't pulling away, she was pulling back to study your gravity. And when you learn to hold your frame, in that quiet, when you no longer panic in the space she creates, you stop being the man who reacts and become the man who reveals. She's not looking for perfection, she's looking for proof. And sometimes, the proof she needs is watching you stand still when everything feels like it's slipping. That's not rejection. That's a silent invitation to show her you don't need to chase because you were never lost. Sign 1. The pullback isn't distance. It's a mirror. You thought she pulled away because something changed. Maybe she got bored. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe it was your fault. Or maybe she was never really in. That's what your mind tells you, and you believe it, because it's the simplest explanation for why something once warm now feels cold. The good mornings stop. The laughter feels thinner. The long replies shrink into K. And suddenly, you're left wondering what the hell happened. So like most men, you react. You lean in. You ask if everything's okay. You try harder. You try to fix it. But here's the quiet truth. It wasn't about what changed in her. It was always about what gets revealed in you when she steps back. You see, we've been taught to believe that connection is built only in closeness, that the more she opens, the more we matter. But the truth is, the moments that define you most as a man are the ones where she closes, because when she senses something real, when emotions begin to stir under the surface, something ancient happens in her body. She doesn't chase it. She tests it, not out of malice, not out of manipulation, but out of instinct. Her nervous system is scanning, not for excitement, not for attention, but for safety. And the way she does that isn't with a question, it's with space. The silence you hate, the shortness that frustrates you, the distance you call rejection. It's a mirror, held quietly in front of you, so she can finally see. Are you steady without her validation, or are you only grounded when she's close? Most men fail this moment because they think the game is still happening on the surface. They think if she steps back, they need to step forward, to balance it out, to make sure the connection doesn't break. But that's not what she's looking for. She's not trying to see how fast you'll run. She's watching to see if you can stand still, not physically, emotionally, internally, energetically. And this is where the quiet test begins. She delays her reply. You check your phone again. She gets quiet. You start overthinking. You wonder if she met someone else. You wonder what you did wrong. And then you try to make it better. You double text. You explain yourself. You say things like, I just want to make sure we're okay. When deep down, what you really mean is, please tell me I still matter. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you seek reassurance in her pullback, you give her the answer she was afraid to find. That your center isn't solid, that your self-worth is borrowed from her attention, that the man she started to feel drawn to only exists when things feel safe and certain. And so she pulls back more, not because she wants to, but because now you've shown her something she can't unsee, not strength, not presence, but a deep craving for control disguised as love, because that's what this test really is. Not a punishment, not rejection, but a way to feel out your emotional temperature. And if you rise too fast, burn too hot, move too suddenly, she knows you're not steady. You're responsive, reactive, built on external signals, and that might feel flattering in the moment, but it doesn't make her feel safe. It makes her feel responsible for holding you together. And no, woman wants to be the glue holding a man's worth in place. But what if you don't chase? What if, when she pulls back, you don't explain, don't correct, don't react, you just breathe, you stay centered, you let her space be what it is, a moment, not a message? That's when something shifts. Not in you, in her. Because when a woman senses uncertainty inside herself, she instinctively creates space, not to escape, but to examine. And when you meet that space with silence instead of panic, with stillness instead of strategy, you activate something deeper than attraction. You activate trust, not trust in words, not in logic, but in something primal. This man does not need me to be whole, and that makes me want to come closer. Because here's what most men never realize. Her body listens to your energy long before her mind listens to your words. And when she feels you're calm, not forced, not fake, but real, settled, present, it tells her nervous system, I'm safe. And nothing is more seductive to a woman who's lived through chaos than a man who doesn't flinch when she pulls away. A man who doesn't prove because he has nothing to sell. A man who doesn't chase because he is not afraid of distance. That's when she leans in again, softly, quietly, without announcement. Maybe she laughs a little louder. Maybe she brushes against you by accident. Maybe her texts get longer again, not because you pulled her back, but because your stillness made her feel free to return. And this is the secret most men miss. Attraction isn't pulled from her, it's allowed by you. And the man who can allow space without collapsing into insecurity, he isn't just attractive, he's rare. But what if you don't chase? What if, when she pulls back, you don't explain, don't correct, don't react, you just breathe, you stay centered, you let her space be what it is, a moment, not a message? That's when something shifts, not in you, in her. Because when a woman senses uncertainty inside herself, she instinctively creates space, not to escape, but to examine. And when you meet that space with silence instead of panic, with stillness instead of strategy, you activate something deeper than attraction. You activate trust, not trust. In words, not in logic, but in something primal. This man does not need me to be whole. And that makes me want to come closer. Because here's what most men never realize. Her body listens to your energy long before her mind listens to your words. And when she feels you're calm, not forced, not fake, but real, settled, present, it tells her nervous system, I'm safe. And nothing is more seductive to a woman who's lived through chaos than a man who doesn't flinch when she pulls away. A man who doesn't prove because he has nothing to sell. A man who doesn't chase because he is not afraid of distance. That's when she leans in again softly, quietly, without announcement. Maybe she laughs a little louder. Maybe she brushes against you by accident. Maybe her texts get longer again, not because you pulled her back, but because your stillness made her feel free to return. And this is the secret most men miss. Attraction isn't pulled from her, it's allowed by you. And the man who can allow space without collapsing into insecurity, he isn't just attractive, he's rare. Let's make this real. Picture this. You're at a cafe. You've seen her a few times before. Conversation's always easy, the energy light. Last time she laughed a little too long at your joke. There was warmth in her eyes. But today, something's off. She walks in, says hi, but it's half a smile. She sits across from you, but she's looking at her phone more than usual. You lean in to speak. She leans back, just slightly. This is the moment 95% of men rush to fill. They ask if something's wrong. They try to win back the warmth. They tighten their grip, thinking closeness can be forced, but not you. You see it, you feel the pullback, and you don't panic. You sit back, you sip your drink slowly. You smile, not out of performance, but out of peace. You let the silence exist. You stop chasing the tone you had yesterday because you understand. Today is its own test. And then she glances up, just for a second. You meet her eyes. Calm, soft, unwavering, not cold, not needy, just there. That moment, that's the shift, because now her nervous system feels it again, the steadiness, the safety, the space to be inconsistent without being judged, the freedom to come and go without fear that your identity crumbles in her absence. And so she leans forward just slightly. Her voice softens. She starts talking again, not because you convinced her, but because you gave her what no one else did, the space to be unsure without losing you. That's what stillness does. It doesn't force, it allows. And in a world full of noise, the man who allows becomes unforgettable. Here's the truth most men never learn. When she pulls away, it's not to end anything. It's to see everything. You, unassisted, unconfirmed, unfed by validation. And in that stillness, where you thought she abandoned you, she's actually watching. Watching if you collapse. Watching if you reach, beg, react, or if you remain calm, still. Because silence is the most honest mirror you'll ever face. It doesn't show your charm. It doesn't reflect your plans. It simply reveals, are you someone she can fall into without holding you up? That's why this moment matters more than anything you say or do or promise, because women don't remember the words you said when things were easy. They remember how you made them feel when they weren't sure anymore, when they were distant, confused, pulled away by fear or doubt or past pain. And you didn't panic, you didn't push, you didn't disappear, you stayed, but not clingingly, not anxiously. You stayed with yourself. And that stillness, it ripples like water. Unaffected by sudden movement, unbothered by a skipped stone. She doesn't want to cause a splash. She wants to see her reflection in your calm, because that's what this test has always been about. Not whether you'll chase her, but whether she can find herself in your silence. Sign 2, her rejection is a controlled fire. You thought she said no, so you backed off. You told yourself she wasn't interested. You labeled her cold, confused, unavailable, but she wasn't rejecting you. She was observing you, because here's what no one told you. Sometimes a woman doesn't want to see how you chase. She wants to see if you can stand in the fire without flinching. Let me explain. It starts with something subtle. She mentions another guy. She casually brings up her ex. She tells you, "You're not really my type," with a smile that lingers just a little too long. You feel that tightening in your chest, that spike of doubt, and in that moment, every instinct inside you screams to prove her wrong, to show her you're better, to shift her perception, to win her back. But what she's really doing isn't rejection. It's a test not of your value, but of your stability. Because deep down, most women already know how attraction begins. They're not confused about what they feel. What they're uncertain about is whether that feeling is safe to follow, and so they create distance, not to hurt you, but to feel the truth of your presence, to see if your confidence lives without her approval, to see if your masculinity can breathe without control. This is where most men collapse, not because they're weak, but because they mistake the fire for a threat instead of a forge, and so they react. They defend. They try to say the right thing, do the right thing, anything to restore the warmth they felt before. But the warmth didn't vanish. It just stepped back to test your temperature, because the woman who lights the fire is not asking if you'll run. She's asking, "Will you burn yourself trying to hold me? Or will you let me feel your stillness in the heat?" She won't say, "I'm testing your frame," and she'll say, "My ex used to do that exact thing." She won't tell you she's scanning your emotional strength. She'll say, "You're probably a heartbreaker, huh?" She won't admit she's starting to feel something deep. She'll say, "We're just friends, right?" With a smile that waits for your reaction. These moments feel harmless, casual, teasing even. But underneath, they're loaded with intention, because women don't always ask for strength directly. They test for it, quietly, subtly, without warning. And the way you respond, in that split second of discomfort, tells her everything she needs to know. Will you defend yourself, get offended, try to shift her opinion, or will you stay rooted? Let's break it down. She says, "That girl seems your type." You panic. You try to explain. No, we're just friends. I only like you." And in doing so, you fail, not because you said the wrong thing, but because you just told her, without saying it, that her comment controlled your calm, that her words knocked you off center, that your worth is on trial, and she holds the verdict. That's not attractive. That's emotional dependence in disguise. But what if you just smiled? What if you said, "She's attractive, sure," and then went back to sipping your drink? What if your tone stayed the same? What if your body stayed still? Then the message becomes clear. I'm unbothered by your spark, because I'm fireproof. And in that moment, she feels something she didn't expect: respect. Not because you proved yourself, but because you didn't. You didn't perform. You didn't seek correction. You let her words float without needing to catch them. And that's rare, because most men hear those lines and think they need to respond, to fix, to convince, but she doesn't want to be convinced. She wants to feel you, unchanged by friction. Because if a simple sentence makes you scramble, how will you handle conflict? How will you handle pressure? How will you handle her? On the days when she doesn't even know what she feels, she's not testing your logic, she's testing your gravity. And if you float with every breeze, you're not the ground she'll ever trust to land on. Sometimes the test isn't in her words. It's in her silence, in her distance, in her sudden shift in attention, just when things start to feel warm. You're at a bar. She's standing close, smiling. You can feel the current building. Then another guy walks over, and suddenly, she laughs louder, steps slightly away from you, starts talking to him, leans in closer than she did with you. You freeze. That knot forms in your stomach. You feel the heat rising in your chest. This is where most men fail. They tense. They get quiet, they look annoyed, or worse, like they try to reclaim her attention, to win her back. But here's what's really happening. She's not lost interest. She's not punishing you. She's not trying to make you jealous for fun. She's checking the architecture of your frame, because when she started feeling something for you, her nervous system asked a question. Can he handle the unknown? And that moment, when she steps closer to another man, isn't about him, it's about you. It's about watching what happens in your energy. Do you collapse inward? Do you lash out with sarcasm? Do you try harder? Or do you disappear? Because if your calm disappears the moment she shifts her attention, then it was never real. It was borrowed from her approval, and that makes her feel less safe, not more desired. But if you stay relaxed, stay engaged with your surroundings, stay soft in your shoulders and still in your breath. If you don't flinch, don't compete, don't chase, then you say something to her nervous system that no words ever could. I trust myself, I don't fear loss, and I won't perform to keep what's meant to stay. That's when the real attraction deepens, because in that moment, while she's laughing at another man's joke, she's watching you, not to see if you'll fight, but to see if you'll vanish inside yourself. And when you don't, when you remain, still composed, magnetic, her body remembers that, even if her words never admit it. Because safety isn't just found in closeness, it's found in your reaction to space. Attraction doesn't begin in her mind, it begins in her body. Before she decides to like you, before she tells herself you're the kind of man she wants. Her nervous system has already voted. It voted the moment you didn't flinch. The moment you let her distance breathe without closing in. The moment she tested you with jealousy, and you stayed still. Let me explain why that matters. Inside her brain, two things are always scanning. Am I safe and am I drawn? And the paradox is, those two questions don't get answered through your compliments, your gifts, or even your words. They get answered by your non-reaction. Why? Because unpredictability activates her stress response, but your stillness regulates it. When she throws out emotional bait, like a comment about another man, and you don't chase it, her body registers something ancient. He's not moved by the moment. He's grounded in something deeper. And when that happens, dopamine flows, not because you impressed her, but because you gave her nervous system something it craves, emotional. Contrast, her inner world may be chaotic, uncertain, full of micro-tests, comparisons, fears, and projections. But you were unmoved, and that contrast creates polarity. Polarity creates charge, and charge creates desire. You didn't reward her pullback with pursuit, you rewarded her confusion with clarity. And now oxytocin joins the party. Because oxytocin, the bond chemical, isn't released just when she feels excitement. It's released when she feels safe to feel excited, when her walls begin to lower, not because you climbed over them, but because you waited at the gate without leaving. That's when her system rewires its answer. From maybe he's not interested, to he might be the only one who's not afraid of my fire. Here's what most men never realize. She wasn't trying to reject you. She was trying to see what would happen if she let the fire get a little hotter. Would you crumble? Would you explode? Would you become the version of every man before? You too fragile, reactive, desperate to douse the flame? Because that's what most women have lived through. Men who looked calm when things were easy, but couldn't hold their center when the heat rose. So she creates a little smoke, mentions another guy, pulls back emotionally, pretends she's fine. And in that smoke, she watches. Do you breathe through it? Or do you choke? If you vanish, get jealous, spiral inward, you confirm her fears, but if you stay present, stay soft in your voice, keep your hands relaxed, your eyes steady, your spirit still, then she sees something she didn't expect, a man who doesn't need to win her, to not lose himself. That's what makes her trust you, not because you played it cool, but because you were cool. Not a tactic, not a technique, but a truth in your body she could feel before her mind could explain it. And when she feels that she no longer needs to test you, she chooses you, not because you chased, not because you convinced, but because in the middle of the fire, you didn't burn. You became the fire. You became the steady warmth she didn't know she was looking for, until her nervous system exhaled and said, "It's him." So the next time she pulls back, the next time she stirs the smoke or fans the flames, don't react, don't explain, don't fight, just smile, gently. And remember, she's not testing your attraction, she's testing your center. And when you remain still, completely, quietly, powerfully still, you don't just pass the test, you become the answer. You always thought attraction was about saying the right thing, but now you see it was about saying nothing and still being felt, because real strength doesn't announce itself, it doesn't chase, it doesn't plead, it just stands. And in that stillness, she finds what every test was really trying to uncover, a man who doesn't need to react, to be remembered. So if this spoke to something in you, drop the word "still" in the comments, not for the algorithm, but to remind yourself that presence doesn't perform, it just is. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of quiet strength, tap subscribe, because this is just the beginning.